break marked. I'm just wondering, Jim, is your group all here?
Sorry?
Is your group all here?
Yep.
Okay. I'm just wondering, yeah, I appreciate that. I'm just wondering if you'd like to hear the stadium group and then break. Is that possible for people? Yep. Okay, come on forward, guys. This is Jim Anderton and Michael De Hammer. Is that right?
No, they're separate. They should be separate.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, they're separate.
They're separate.
So this is 15. Are you Michael? I'm sorry.
I'm Tim Shanahan.
Tim Shanahan. Tim is the CEO of the Stadium
Okay.
Trust.
So this is just the first part of the...
Michael De Hammer is actually a different submitter altogether.
Yes, I appreciate that. Well, yeah, I appreciate that. It's just that they're here early. I thought what we might do is be courteous to them, take them now, and take a slightly later afternoon tea. Is Michael here?
Yes.
Michael Aiken.
He's not coming today.
It's
Okay.
a different submission.
Yes, I appreciate
Completely
that.
different.
I appreciate that, and he may or may not be here today. So we'll do this one now.
Michael's on the trust board, but...
It's different Michael.
Oh, different Michael.
There's more than one in the city, Jim.
That's true. Oh, well.
Okay,
There's only one of me. Thank you very much for receiving the submission. I'll speak briefly to the submission, which of course you have a copy of already. The new stadium, AMI Stadium, was established in 2012 as a temporary replacement for the damaged stadium. It was built in anticipation of a new stadium being available in 2017, a lifespan of 5 years. The majority contribution of $34 million came from the government. Council support was in the form of the land, which it still owns, of course, and various infrastructure that remains the property of the council, including the field itself and the lights, which will all be returned to the council at the end of the stadium's life. And it is the stadium's intention that the whole of the stadium be returned in whatever form a discussion between us arrives at. At present, the Stadium Trust anticipates being able to meet operating costs from revenue through to about until March 2017. It's one of the few stadiums that's able to do that, and that's partly because, of course, we're debt-free. But this would require financial support from council should any untoward, unforeseen or extraordinary events occur. I'm talking about some major thing that won't be covered by insurance, like a burst water main under the field or whatever. I'm just flagging it. We're hoping nothing happens like that, but you never know. If council is confident that a new stadium will be in place by 2017, then there will only need to be discussion on decommissioning costs in terms of returning it to the council if that's the wish. And within that context, of course, the long-term planning process. However, if the stadium is required beyond the 31st of March 2017, then there will only then we need only to that is, if there's a new stadium in place and we don't need the continuation of the AMI, the present one, then all we need to do is discuss the decommissioning costs. However, if the stadium is required beyond the 31st of March, that is, the proposed stadium will not be ready, then new consents will need to be obtained. Actually, they'll need to be obtained by 2016, as a matter of fact, anyway. And financial investment provided to support the extended life of the stadium, because there will be some essential maintenance required to keep the stadium going. The stadium includes a seat and scaffold system that comprises 11,524 of the stadium's 17,800 seats. At the time of constructing the stadium, it was decided to lease this system. We didn't have enough money to buy all the seats, and because it was a short term, we thought it was best to lease. With hindsight, I think we'd have been better to buy them, to be honest, but there we are. If the stadium is required to have an extended life, it would be prudent to purchase the seat and scaffolding system now. The cost of that is $2 million. We've already purchased 5,000 or 6,000 of the seats, and that has lowered our lease payments and therefore enabled us to run our affairs without any losses. And this would go even further. This would cost about $2 million, but it would save us in excess of $500,000 a year. And over a 5 to 10 year extended lifetime, that would save us $3.5 to $6.5 million. And that would be a cost of decommissioning the seats, which we won't own, of course, so we'll have to give them back and upgrade them so they're a going concern. That's all part of the contract. Because if we don't buy them, the stadium won't own them and won't be able to pass them on to the council. We'll have to give them back. By providing the Trust with a $2 million grant now, the council will provide us with the means to purchase the existing seat system, eliminate the need to pay annual lease costs in 2015 and beyond, and any scenario that required the stadium to remain in use beyond 2017 would make the purchase very advantageous, not only from a financial point of view, but would also put ownership and control over the seating system in the hands of the Stadium Trust and ultimately the council. And so you could actually give those seats to other organisations or use them for a second-tier stadium or whatever you wanted. Importantly, the savings achieved for the Trust on lease costs, the $3.5 to $6.5 million, can be applied to various maintenance projects that would extend the life of the stadium beyond March 2017. Our engineering advice is that it would be able to be extended for 5 to 10 years or even more, and be done cheaper now, of course, if we do it, than in the future. If we do it now, we save all that money and we're able to spend that money on the essential maintenance that would extend the life of the stadium. Doing nothing is not an option because it won't last beyond that if we don't enter into we've already got a maintenance program, but there would be an extended maintenance program required if the life of the stadium can be extended. Our engineering advice is that it can be. The Stadium Trust is happy to engage with the council and its officers as desired between now and the annual budget being finalised to discuss this proposal further in more detail. There are some commercial in confidence issues around the lease costs and so on, and we're understating it here, to be honest, but we don't want to go into the detail of that because some of it's commercially sensitive, but we could do that in private with officials. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I heard correctly that if you did this, then that stadium could last 10 years? Yes,
Tim can answer that in more detail. We have an asset maintenance program report from City Care, and we also have engineering advice about the structures and everything and the maintenance required to keep them going, and we're advised that the stadium life could be extended up to 10 years and beyond.
Thank you for the, sorry about that. Thanks for the deputation. You would have seen probably yesterday the document that Sarah put out, which indicated it's the first, I'm Chair of Strategy and Planning, Raf's Chair of Finance, and for both of us it was the first that we saw of these indicative timelines. But they obviously put out a completion date in the second quarter of 2019. News to us, but you know that's fine if they're signalling that. Given that it is the Crown signalling that, and they're obviously a major player in this proposed stadium and also this stadium, have you spoken to them about any cost contribution, particularly around the $2 million to purchase the seating, because the business model has changed quite drastically if what Sarah is proposing as of yesterday is indeed true? If they then change the business model on you then, do you think it's fair for them to be able to contribute?
I didn't see any detail of what their new business model is in the paper.
No, there's no business model at all. It's not around the business model though, it's around the timelines. No. So
and was there any indication in the detail of any significant contribution from the government other than that already advised?
No, the only thing that was in there was a change of timeline. The first that I've seen about it was as of yesterday. It said that that an indicative construction completion was the second quarter of 2019. So that obviously has implications on you and I.
We are in consultation with the government, of course, because they are the major stakeholder. And I don't want to speak for Minister Brownlee, but all the indications I have is that the government was unlikely to increase its contribution to the stadium over and above what has already been indicated. But I can't say any more than that, really.
Okay.
But Mr. Brownlee does know of this presentation.
Great.
And he knows that we're in a position where we must know very soon whether we are going to increase the maintenance on the building to keep it going or not, because we can't say that it's available after 2017 if we don't do that, actually.
No, totally
we can say that it will be available if we do, but if we don't, then 2017 is it. And as I see it, and one of the reasons for this submission is that the city doesn't want to find itself in a position where it doesn't have any stadium.
No. So obviously we'll need to have some dialogue with them too.
No, from 2017. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I'd suggest come in and see us as soon as possible, so we can discuss this.
Obviously, I'm just wondering if you've considered an interest-free loan for these seats once the decision is made, if there is one made on the timeline. Because if the cost of $2 million over 4 years, if you're paying $500,000 a year, they could be paid off. And also, at the end of that time, when they're finished being used, is there any resale value in those? Will they be used up?
I'll let Tim comment on that, but just to remind you that we already have taken a commercial loan. It's at commercial rates from the Trust Bank.
Canterbury Community Trust.
Canterbury Community Trust for the other seats. I think there's about 5,000 of them. And we also got a grant from the Lion Foundation for that. But these remaining seats are the more substantial part, and they're the ones that we're looking at. And there's always been the possibility of a commercial loan, but the problem with it was that the repayments and the interest would take up all the money that we'd be needing for the renovations and maintenance.
Addressing your question that was interest-free loan, I guess we've got to look at it from two perspectives. We're in a position where right now what we're saying is there's an opportunity to reduce our operating costs by, in some shape or form, purchasing the remaining seats in the facility. The reason we're looking to purchase those is it's going to free up capital for us to invest on maintaining certain aspects of that facility, and we can do some of that maintenance now far cheaper than in the future. We're open to any model that's going to achieve those outcomes, and to me it's about partnership, and it's about the Trust working with Council, working with Government to identify the best way forward to achieve that, to satisfy the desires of all three parties. Our preference is certainly a grant. We move forward, we start investing money in those maintenance projects.
I think there's obviously going to be a need for the stadium to continue beyond 2017. That seems incredibly clear to me. So I think we want to have those discussions with you in terms of how we make this happen. Yanni's going to ask the last question. Thank you.
Have you approached the rugby union or the IRB for a contribution, given that they are one of the main benefactors, and they do seem to make a lot of money, beneficiaries. They do seem to make a lot of money. They did make a lot of money from the Rugby World Cup. They obviously are making money within New Zealand. So
yeah, I'll jump in here and indicate that in terms of Canterbury Rugby, we currently have a lease agreement with them that means that a portion of their profits from each year does come to the Stadium Trust, plus we are charging them a higher fee. So we are in a position where they are already making contributions of various degrees to the stadium. In terms of an approach to IRB or NZRU, we haven't done anything of that nature recently. I guess it's a matter of looking at what are the uses of the stadium and how is it appropriate to apportion those to different user groups, bearing in mind that a stadium also has a local community benefit.
Could I just make, I should just say, in respect of Mr. Brownlee, so I get it very clear, he has been personally, he gets a hard time in many ways, but I have to say that he's personally been one of the catalysts for the stadium being built in the first place, and so there's no doubting his commitment to it, but my impression is that the government is not likely to want to increase that commitment for that particular project any further than it is already.
Obviously, we want to have some further talks with you at some stage, I would think.
Will the council advise us when they'd like to meet, or do we?
No, we'll expect you to know it by ESP, Jim, actually.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all very much. What I'd like to do now, I appreciate Michael's here, is actually break and come back at 11 o'clock. Is that okay with everyone?